Hi, everyone, and welcome to the afternoon session of the AGM. Thanks very much for joining us. I think we can jump right in with the adoption of the agenda. So we're going to cover first the GSAC strategy and results. So that will include the three pillars: policy advocacy with an impact, staff empowerment for rights protection, and individual staff assistance. And then GSAC 2020. So I'll just give you a few highlights from the action plan, budget, communications plan, and the new results matrix for next year. Then Craig Murphy, one of the GSAC regional reps for headquarters, will speak about the 10th October World Mental Health Day event. And after that, after a Q&A session, then Agnès Bernot will speak about GSAC legal assistance and insurance, and Nicola Graviano will speak about our financial report. And there are also headquarters regional representatives for GSAC. After that, we'll talk about the next steps, and then we'll have a poll with just 2 questions, and then any other business. Okay. If you have any questions or comments on the agenda, please raise your hand. You see there's the raise hand icon here. It looks like this. I'm just checking. Okay, no raised hands, so I'm assuming that we can adopt the agenda and move on to the GSAC strategy and results. So here you see on the screen the slides as well. So the first one is on policy advocacy with an impact. So for this, you may wonder, how do we select topics? There are so many policies out there. Well, it's really based on 2 things. One is on staff interests and concerns, and we particularly have noted your interest from the policy priorities survey that we put out in September, and which we'll be putting out on an annual basis. And secondly, it's based on which policies the administration is in the process of developing or revising, so that we can provide inputs from staff into those policies. Now, we've already had 2 policy packages, as we call them, that have been put together. The first was on performance management, and the second was on unified parental leave. So what are the elements? We hire an external consultant to put together a background paper based on a comparative analysis of good practices from UN agencies and other international organizations, and sometimes private sector agencies as well. Then we also hold a webinar with staff members in different time zones to gather their views on the subject matter. And then we create the GSAC position with concrete recommendations that we present to the administration. So we've liaised very, very closely with HRM, the Human Resources Management Division in particular. There's been excellent collaboration that we've enjoyed with them in putting together these policy packages. The first one on performance management, and as a result, in early next year, the staff evaluation system, the SES, will be scrapped in favor of another system that will incorporate 360-degree feedback and multi-rater feedback. So that's peer feedback as well. So that means that supervisees can also provide feedback to supervisors, and peers can do the same. There'll also be an external rebuttal process included in that new policy. Then the second one that we developed and we recently shared with all of you was on unified parental leave. And so that entailed having a consultant develop a background paper with this comparative analysis in terms of looking at how to develop a family-friendly, flexible, unified parental leave policy that combines maternity, paternity, adoption, and surrogacy leave into one. So there were quite a number of concrete recommendations that we made to the administration. And again, we collaborated very closely with HRM on that initiative. The next one will actually start on the 15th of November, and that's on staff development and learning. We're in the process of hiring a consultant, a different consultant now, to work on that, and that will cover things like study leave, eligibility criteria for training, workshops, informal and social learning, and diversity and inclusion, as well as career development opportunities. So that's policy advocacy with an impact. One other aspect of this is that GSAC sits on many different boards, from the Rotation Appointments and Postings Board, to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, to the JARB, the Joint Administrative Review Board, and the Training Advisory Committee, and the Staff Pension Committee, and many others. And that also helps with policy recommendations. Okay, the second area that I want to go into is staff empowerment for rights protection. And this has three main ingredients. The first, and a very important one, is the new legal assistance and legal insurance coverage that we offer as of the 1st of March 2019. Now, as you probably recall, there had been a gap between when there was the transition from the previous SAC to GSAC. So there was a gap of 11 months, in fact, in which there was no legal assistance or legal insurance coverage for staff members. Well, that changed on the 1st of March. And essentially, what this means is that we now have a GSAC external legal advisor who provides informal legal advice and consultation through Skype with staff members, with GSA members. We have 10,957 Global Staff Association members, and it is necessary to be a GSA member in order to receive this informal legal advice. Then, at the same time, we're trying to support GSA members to be able to resolve any matters that they have informally, any issues. So that means by collaborating closely with the ombudsperson, and we do collaborate very closely and are able to identify, address, and resolve a number of issues with staff members' permission, with the HRM director and colleagues from the team there, and with staff supervisors, among others. So we are able to resolve many of the issues through informal means. Some of them do require legal advice from the external legal advisor, and then very few also require legal insurance coverage because they have to go to the Joint Administrative Review Board and the ILO Administrative Tribunal. But that really is few of the cases, and we'll hear from Yes or No more in depth about that when she presents. We managed to renegotiate the cost of legal in the last month or so. We managed to get for ESA members, and that makes a significant difference and is allowing us to do it, and I'll go into that in a moment. So this means that for the first time ever, national staff have their rights protected and are safeguarded from a legal point of view, because this is the first time that they've been able to have legal assistance and insurance coverage because they are GSA members. But this coverage is very broad. There's broad access. So some people ask, well, if the unified staff regulations and rules have not been rolled out in my country yet, how does that impact my ability to access the legal assistance and insurance coverage? And we say it doesn't impact it at all. All the 10,957 GSA members have full access to legal assistance and legal insurance coverage, as long as they meet the terms and conditions in the two contracts. So that means that they have to have tried to resolve the issues through the informal means that I already mentioned. And secondly, the GSAC external legal advisor needs to have stated that there is a reasonable chance of success at the JARB. If these conditions have been met, then we submit a request form to Fortuna, and they decide on whether to provide legal insurance coverage or not. To date, for all cases that we've submitted to them, they have not denied us coverage. Okay, let's look at the next ingredient of staff empowerment for rights protection. So this is supporting the creation of National Staff Association Committees, NSACs. So they've increased from 37 when we started with our full-time operations in September of last year to 44 at present. And it looks like there will be another 2 or 3 that will be formed in the next 2 months before the end of the year. Our goal is that we have at least 50, if not more than that, by the end of next year, as you can see from our results matrix. And these NSACs are very important because they safeguard the rights and defend the interests of IOM staff. So that includes things like conditions of employment. So working with the respectful workplace focal points who are linked to the Office of the Ombudsperson to ensure that there's a respectful, harmonious working environment. That means conducting training on career development and counseling staff and providing advice on career development opportunities. And that means also looking after staff members' well-being and their welfare. And they offer frontline assistance, so they identify, address, and resolve issues at the source in the country offices. So this is very important, and as the next step, we'll be training almost all of the chairpersons and vice chairpersons of the NSACs in December, from the 3rd to the 4th of December in Geneva. And we'll be having real-life scenarios. We'll have simulations, case studies, and role plays. And they'll have opportunities also to be able to meet with different units of the administration and to hear from them. So that will help them in trying to resolve issues at the national level as well. So the third and final ingredient of staff empowerment for rights protection is access to information. And we have some examples here. We've started with a podcast series. The first one was 1 year on with the DG on the 1st of October, sorry, that we broadcasted that out. We'll be doing one soon with the DDG. And we'll also be branching out to the field next year and having podcast interviewees who are national staff and international staff in a range of different functions. And we've also had videos that we've put out. You see Berta Fernandez there, one of our vice chairs. You see Gabby Castillejos there from the GSAC Secretariat. We put out regular videos now, and some more are coming in December as well. You see our top 10 tips. This is based on staff concerns and different cases that we realized that, wow, you know, these same policies, you know, there seem to be some provisions stipulated where staff members are unsure, unaware. We put those things in the top 10 tips. You see an example of a policy bite there. We have several policy bites that we've put out, and we'll continue to put these things out in the next year as well. So, the last pillar of our strategy is individual staff assistance. So, to date, we've assisted 264 Global Staff Association members worldwide, including 80 collectively. We've also assisted 5 staff members since May when we inaugurated and launched the GSAC Compassion Fund. And that includes an hourly worker, includes the family of a staff member who's in a very difficult situation, and it includes 3 volunteers who had been working on IOM contracts and who passed away in a violent situation, unfortunately. So the Compassion Fund is enabling us to support IOM staff and non-IOM staff who are working with IOM on IOM contracts in a way that we're not able to do through the Spooler Welfare Fund because of rules and regulations. And the administration, through the director of the Department of Resources Management, is also matching these contributions. They've matched all of these contributions that I've mentioned so far. And they've committed to matching other contributions that GSAC provides through the Compassion Fund. So in June of this year, an external assessment was conducted by a consultant in which he surveyed 37 staff members who had received support from GSAC individually. So over 73% said they would recommend GSAC's individual support to a colleague. 68.4% of international staff said that they were very satisfied or satisfied with the support received. And 66.6% of national staff said that they were very satisfied or satisfied with GSAC support. In addition, 62.5% of staff members who received legal advice from the external legal advisor were very satisfied or satisfied. So we hope that when we conduct this assessment next year, around the same time, that these numbers would have increased as well. Okay, so these are some pie charts from the consultant. So you see the gender breakdown is more or less equal, very similar there. Now, interestingly, you see the level. There's parity from G4 to G7, 41%, and from P1 to P3, 41%. So that means that 82% of all those who were provided with individual support were between G4 and P3. So a good percentage are national staff as well, which is also important, since national staff, this is the first time that they're a part of GSAC. In previous SACs, there were only headquarters employees and international staff. So it's great that they're also coming to us for individual case support. And you see the regional breakdown. Africa, 28% in the lead, 25% Middle East and North Africa, and 22% for Europe. And then on issues, interestingly, more than 50% have come to us on human resources issues, whether it's post-abolition or non-renewal of contracts or termination of contracts or infringement of rights or the way in which policies were unevenly applied or implemented or in a non-transparent fashion. So this was more than 50%. And then 22% staff welfare and 19% came to us about issues related to misconduct and grievances. So I want to conclude the presentation with just some highlights on the action plan, budget communications plan, and results matrix for 2020. So from the action plan, I'd like to say that we want to branch out to conduct some training at the field level, and particularly capacity building for national staff, as that represents 80% of our workforce, and also managers in terms of soft skills, which affects all staff as well. Then we also are going to have, it's hard to believe, our elections for the GSAC regional representatives in May of next year. So it's hard to believe that already we'll be handing over to the new set of regional representatives on the 10th of July next year. And that's because they have 2-year terms. For the chairperson, it's a 3-year term according to our statutes, so it will be early in 2021 that we'll hold those elections. And then the budget. As I mentioned before, we've been able to renegotiate the terms and conditions with Fortuna, our legal service provider, and we've reduced the legal insurance fees as a result from 20 Swiss francs per person to 15 Swiss francs per person, which is a significant reduction. It's a 25% reduction. And after only 8 months of being on this contract, right? So this is wonderful news. Now, that means that we've been able to have a proportional reduction of membership fees for national and international staff. So for national staff, they've gone down from 0.15% to 0.10%. Well, this is what we'll be voting on, whether or not you want the reduced membership fees during the poll at the end of the AGM. So, you know, if you vote in favor of this, then from February of 2020, there will be a 1/3 reduction in fees. So that's for national staff, and for international staff from 0.3 to 0.2%. So that's a proportional reduction of 1/3 for both national staff and international staff as a result of the reduction, the significant reduction in legal insurance fees. Communications plan, as I mentioned before, we have a new podcast series. We're branching out next year to the field. We'll be including both national and international staff. And I mentioned the policy packages. Well, we've already done performance management and unified parental leave. We're about to start on staff development and learning. Next year, based on the results of the policy priority survey that we put out, in which we had 501 respondents, we'll be having a policy package on the medical service plan, MSP, and on flexible working arrangements. And we'll have a policy bite on classification, because those were the top three choices made in terms of the policy priority survey. And lastly, we have our results matrix. So this is brand new, and really what it is an accountability framework to track, monitor, and report on measurable results, so that in our next AGM, at the end of next year, we'll be able to report back vis-a-vis the indicators, baselines, and targets included within the results matrix. So thank you very much. I would like to open up the floor for questions before turning the floor over to Craig Murphy to present on the World Mental Health Day event. So if you could please raise your hand just like this if you have any questions or any comments on anything that's been presented. Okay, I see one hand raised. That's from Gyula Kiss. Gyula, I'm unmuting your microphone. Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Gyula.
Okay, just one thing that you specifically mentioned right now is, I think, for the future of the Global Staff Association, it would be very important to revise the issue, what you just mentioned, that indeed the GSAC term of 2 years is coming to an end, and also the term of the chairperson of 3 years is coming to an end, which is not very productive, maybe. So in the future, maybe we should put some effort to revise this for both for the committee and the chairperson to have a longer term, as we are all busy, and it just makes practically more sense, probably, to have longer terms of both entities. So that's something for the future. Yeah, one idea maybe.
Okay. Sorry, Gyula. Yes, you were saying something else?
Thank you. No, thank you and over.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Gyula. So in terms of that, yes, thank you for putting that suggestion forward. So I think so the elections would be held in May, and we'll be quite busy from February to May with the campaigns and putting all the materials out and so on. And so certainly what I think we can do, and we'll also, when we come to any other business, we'll also discuss this, but what we could do is in the second half of next year, we can potentially put out a survey on certain elements included within the Global Staff Association statutes. And we can ask staff members specific questions in terms of the statutes and get their views. And then from there we can, if the majority of staff members feel, okay, you know, this part of the statutes is unclear, maybe we need to have some discussions on this, or perhaps this would be amended potentially. But that's something that certainly we can look into, a sort of comprehensive survey on the GSA statutes, including this aspect of term limits and the time and post for these terms. So thank you very much for the suggestion. We've noted it down, and this is something that we could potentially incorporate into the survey that we put out in the second half of next year. Thank you, Gyula. Okay, Gyula, and if you could remove your hand. Yes, thank you. Okay, great. Anyone else? I think that's it for questions. Great. Thank you again, and Craig, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you for all that are here or that have called in for this GSAC meeting. My name is Craig Murphy, and I'm one of the GSAC regional representatives here in Geneva. I'd like to take just a few minutes to talk to you and brief you on an event that took place on the 10th of October on World Mental Health Day. And during that, we collaborated with HRM, and specifically staff welfare, as well as the diversity inclusion with Javier Orellana, staff welfare officer Anna Eliatambi, as well as myself and Joe. We participated in 2 sessions that took place on the 10th to commemorate World Mental Health Day. Some of the topics that were covered, generally mental health and mental illness were covered in the interventions, as well as diversity and inclusion and some of the policies as it relates to IOM and the efforts that have been done and the HRM under Javier and his efforts under diversity and inclusion. Additionally, Joe was able to make some interventions and remarks on positive psychology, what it means, why it's important, how it can help us in the workplace. And I also gave a short intervention on well-being, looking specifically at what this concept means, why it's important, also looking at stress management as well as wellness and dealing with some of the stress that goes along with the job, trying to ensure that we have a general overall well-being, how that contributes to us and our ability to live comfortably, but also to accomplish our jobs. So balancing the sort of personal life with the professional responsibilities. Although these were some of the themes at the World Mental Health Day event that took place on October 10th. We also had, in conjunction with that, you may be aware, a marketplace. So in one of the conference rooms, the large conference room in headquarters, we had a number of resources, and this is where the activities took place. We had a chance to engage with a large number of staff over a couple of different sessions throughout that day. In addition, we worked closely with MCD, who has been very supportive of these efforts and produced 2 videos in relation to World Mental Health Day. One was launched in conjunction with the event in advance that set up some of the concepts and topics that were covered that I've also just covered now. In addition, the speeches and the interactions were covered, were videoed, and that has since been made into a summary document, a summary film that is available and has been shared. So if you wanted to review some of the things that have been captured or said, or if you weren't able to dial in, we would encourage you to look on the intranet for these 2 videos. It will give you a much more comprehensive picture of what we were able to cover. Lastly, I'd just like to reiterate, there are a number of resources on these topics, these very important topics. The Staff Welfare Officer has been very pioneering and instrumental over the last several months and last year or so to develop a number of modules looking at some of these topics in terms of work-life balance, mental health, mental illness, stress management, etc. All of these modules are found on the intranet, and we encourage you to look at them and to do your best in accessing some of this rich information that we feel is important and helping everyone else. In addition to that, SDL has developed a number of programs and has a rich range of trainings and platforms for also learning on a lot of the details and specific issues that have been covered under their iLearn platform. So we would also encourage you to access that. So all in all, it was a great event. We found that it was productive. We had good coordination with HRM, with GSAC, and with others that have come together for this World Mental Health Day on October 10th. And we're happy just to give you that quick intervention and briefing on that. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. But otherwise, I'm going to hand back to Joe to continue along with the agenda. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Let me just check if there are any, while you're here, let's see if there are any questions. You can just put your hand up. Any questions on World Mental Health Day? Okay, thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Agnès to present on GSAC legal assistance and insurance. Agnès, I am going to unmute you. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Can you hear me well?
Yes, thank you. We can hear you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Arnaud. I'm regional rep for HQ, together with Nicola Graviano and Craig Murphy. And I will just complement what Joe has already stated about the legal assistance and insurance. This is a paramount pillar of the GSAC strategy. So as you know, we have a new contract with Fortuna since March 2019, which covers all GSA members. For formal litigations, the selling package being 15,000 Swiss francs, broken down up to 12,000 Swiss francs for job and 3,000 Swiss francs for ILO tribunal. But as rightly highlighted by Joe, before we reach the litigation stage, it's important that we try to solve any issues informally. That's why we have developed a new framework with the GSAC, so that we have a good partnership with the ombudsperson, with the HR, to try to solve issues informally, for informal means. We also hired the services of a legal advisor, represented by a lawyer, Mr. Ed Flaherty and Mrs. Anka Petria, who are able to react promptly and provide a legal opinion before we move to Fortuna for opening a case. This also includes a new case management system that's been also implemented with the help of the GSAC Secretariat, and we have a GSAC legal mailbox. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Nicola Graviano and myself are GSAC legal focal points. Knowing that we also have developed a new form for GSAC request for assistance, which means that we hope that we now have a better process in place. Also, thanks to the new negotiation skills of our GSAC chair, we are now nearly succeeded in renegotiating the contract, as stated before by Joe, with a lower premium, with Fortuna, from 20 Swiss francs per person up to 15 Swiss francs. And we are also in permanent contact with Fortuna by email. Also, we had 2 meetings since the rollout of the current contract. One was held in May this year, another one in mid-September, and we are planning a final yearly review meeting by the end of this year. So it's important also to refer to 2 key documents about this matter. So first, the GSAC's top 10 tips, as mentioned before by Joe, and also we have issued an FAQ about legal assistance and insurance coverage that will be updated for next year. So don't hesitate if you have questions, we are available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agnès. Okay, any questions?
Joe?
Yes. Thank you very much, Agnès. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I see.
Yeah. Maybe just to complement also about the assistance provided since the beginning of our mandate, Joe, as you mentioned, although that we had 264 requests for assistance, including 80 collective requests. Out of them, 38 were submitted for legal advice to our lawyer, and we opened so far 7 cases with Fortuna.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important addition because it shows that, that the informal means of trying to address and resolve issues are working by working closely with the Office of the Ombudsperson, with the HRM Director and his team, and others in the administration. We've been able to resolve many of the issues because only 7 cases had to go to Fortuna in terms of legal insurance requests, and they haven't denied any. So that's great. So thank you so much. Okay, so I think Agnes, you can remove your hand, and we can go over to Nicola to give us the financial report. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thanks everybody for attending the second part of the assembly. I'm actually not going to give you the actual financial report for the reasons that I will mention briefly, but instead I will give you some information on where we stand with our financial report, which will eventually be submitted to auditors and then cleared. As you may know, as SAC, so before the GSAC, we were working through what is called the general ledger, which is a specific mechanism for in accountancy, and it was decided that when we set up the GSAC to turn into a budget with proper structure and proper WBS, and manage also in terms of currency in USD instead of Swiss franc, as it was done previously when SAC was not the global SAC that we know now. This has resulted in a change into our financial structure, essentially, and a transition from the GL account to the WBS structure that we have nowadays. So we had to close one and open the other one, and this is determining some further work on our side to make sure that this is done properly. So this is why the financial report is not yet ready. You may remember that in the previous assembly, we reported until 31st of May 2018. So we are currently in the process of finalizing the report for the second half of 2018 and the year 2019. This being said, I can give you some general information about our financial situation, and overall, what we can say is that through the membership fees, we can raise approximately 50,000 USD per month, and with some fluctuation from month to month because there are some members that leave in the course of the year. So we had months where we went up to 54,000, and there were months where we were going with as low as $41,000. But as I said, in average, we talk about approximately 50,000 USD that we raise every month. So far, we have raised a total of 450,000 USD. Which has been primarily spent on legal insurance. So our contract with Fortuna, our contract with Head Flaherty and his legal bureau, and there are some other expenditures that relate to communication, to the consultant that we have recruited for the policy packages, etc. But again, most of our expenditures relate to legal insurance. Based on where we stand so far in terms of expenditures, based on the foreseen expenditures that are in the pipeline by the end of the year, which is mainly related to the NSAC training that will take place in a few weeks, we estimate that we'll be able to carry over around 80 to 85,000 USD into the new year. In any case, as soon as the report is finalized and is audited, then it will be shared with all of you for your information and to have a better look into the figures, and this will be done in the next 2 weeks. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. You can just stay for a moment in case there are any questions. You can always put your hand up if there are any questions. Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Nicola. Okay, great. We go on to the next item on our agenda, and that's next steps. So voting will be open for 48 hours after the AGM for those who were not able to participate in the morning session or the afternoon session of the AGM, but only for those who sent an email to the GSAC Secretariat between last week and today at 2:30. And quite a number of people did, and they'll be getting the link in about 45 minutes from now or an hour from now. And then it will remain open for 48 hours as per our statute. And then on the 8th of November, that's this Friday, the 1-month opt-out period will begin. So an email will be sent out from Manila, and that's when the opt-out period will begin. And if staff who wish to opt out don't opt out by the 8th of December, then they would have to wait another year, because there will only be a 1-month period again in the end of next year. Okay, great. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. I think we can move on to our poll. And then we have any other business. So 2 questions for the poll. One is, do you agree with the reduced membership fees for 2020? So remember, we've reduced them, we're proposing to reduce them by 1/3. And how satisfied are you with the meeting? And you have various choices there. So the poll is up there on the right-hand side of the screen, and there you see. We'll give you a minute or so to respond to the poll. Okay, it's open now. Okay, good, thank you. Some of you have started responding. Waiting for the rest of you. Great, about 1/3 of you have responded. Yeah, great. Okay, about another 30 seconds or so should be fine. Okay, about another 30 seconds. Great. You've all responded in record time. So here we have our answers. I think we're going to close it now. No answer from 2. Yeah. So do you agree with the reduced membership fees for 2020? 7 said yes and 1 said no. So this morning, 20 said yes and 0 said no. So in total, we have 27 who have agreed and 1 who didn't agree with the reduced membership fees. Okay. And how satisfied are you with the meeting? 2 said very satisfied, 5 said satisfied, and 0 said not satisfied. So that's great, because this morning as well, everyone said very satisfied or satisfied. So that means in both sessions of the AGM, the morning and the afternoon, no one has responded that they're not satisfied. Of course, if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions that you want to share with us, please send them to the GSAC Secretariat, and you see the email address is right there on your screen. So now we come to the last item of business, and that's any other business. So we have 2 things that we'll discuss here. One, before I turn the floor over to Berta Fernandez, our Vice Chairperson, one of our 2 Vice Chairpersons, I'd just like to mention a comment, an anonymous comment from a staff member that came in actually today. They just wanted to call everyone's attention to the fact that there has been some direct recruitment that's been going on for senior positions in headquarters, and they've asked that GSAC raise this as a potential area of concern. So we are raising this. This is something that we put in the GSAC minutes, the Joint Administration and GSAC minutes, from our meeting of the 18th of September. So we put those minutes out a few weeks ago. So we did talk a bit about direct recruitment, especially of senior officials at headquarters level, but it is something that we're in an ongoing discussion with the administration on. So just wanted to raise that. Now over to Berta Fernandez, one of our GSAC vice chairs. We have two. We have Berta, who's based in Brussels, and the other is Emmanuel Maina, who's a national staff member who's based in Nigeria. So Berta, I'm unmuting your mic. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you, Joe. Good afternoon and good morning also to those who are in the Americas. So as Joe was saying, I'm one of the two vice chairs. There's one international, one national vice chair, and we have also, among the GSAC currently almost 1/3 of the representatives are national staff. So the point that I wanted to address today has been brought up by colleagues in this region in Brussels, that is related to the need to impose quotas based on proportional representation, trying to make sure that the national staff is represented in GSAC, and so that there are more national representatives, or the more GSAC national representatives that are national staff. So, well, first of all, we need to clarify that the previous SAC, before the GSAC even entered or existed, advocated for several years to make precisely GSAC a reality that would be meaning that all staff worldwide would elect through a democratic process following the one person, one vote principle their representatives. And they would choose those representatives, those who came forward, who would campaign for these positions, based on their competencies and skills, and not necessarily based on the contract that they hold, right? And one element that it's important to understand here is that as GSAC, we are part now as an association, staff association. We have joined the Federation of International Civil Servants Association, FICSA, and you can go to their website, fixa.org, if you want to check more information. But it's important to remind everyone that FICSA defines international civil servants as public sector employees who work for international organizations such as the UN and others. And the reason is that, we are all public sector employees. These organizations, like in the case of the UN and others, for which we all work, are sovereign, and that means that national labor law does not apply to these organizations, and instead staff conditions of service are governed by rules and regulations defined by the organizations and approved by member states. Those member states, the same member states that provide the funding for the organizations. So, among others, no? So if staff have grievances, they cannot bring a case to a national court. Instead, grievances are handled by the organizations and by administrative tribunals, like the ILO Administrative Tribunal. So indeed, it's a very particular area of, a very specialized area of work, and the bottom line is that we all, as GSAC representatives, the nature of the job is that no matter if you're an international or national, that you have to represent all staff without discrimination. So there's no contraposition, there's no juxtaposition or antagonism between national and international staff. And what is more, there has to be in line with the principle of professional integrity. There has to be an obligation of representatives to focus on those issues that are relevant to both national and international staff, and to support and assist them accordingly. So there's a code of conduct, obviously, but there's a commitment that is there, and that should be at the essence of the relationship. Obviously, we agree that there needs to be wider representation of national staff. But that's not the only criteria. I mean, there's also criteria that we should take into account, that we have taken into account already, like gender aspects. That's why we have one vice chair that is a woman and another that is a man, but also OECD and non-OECD criteria. That's why I am, a vice chair from Europe, and you have another vice chair that is from Africa. And other parameters that we could take into account. So this is a discussion that requires research involving not only other UN agencies and FICSA on the advantages and the disadvantages, the pros and cons of amending GSAC status to allow for imposed quotas based on proportional representation along these lines. Just to finalize, I mean, the point on GSAC strategic areas of work that were mentioned before. I mean, definitely we believe that staff needs to be empowered for rights protection, and that the answer to any violations cannot come only from GSAC, and that's why precisely we are working on building the capacity of national SACs in many countries. And we will have this training in December. This is something also that we have discussed with HRM, the need to double as a target in this next year, and in the years to come also, but in this next year to start the amount of national SACs. And finally, just to mention that the GSAC is a young body, and so we are working on these structures and these systems to put procedures in place, so that because we need to walk before we can run, and therefore we need to really make due diligence and look into all these aspects, and definitely survey staff like us, as we have done in other instances, and ask for opinion in any action that we take in full transparency. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Berta. I see there's one hand up from Gyula. So Gyula, you have the floor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Gyula.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I think we should take it as a warning sign that we have such a low number of attendees. Correct me, but I see 10 attendees right now in the annual general meeting, and it was 20-something morning. That's something that I think we should promote the meetings probably further, or maybe on a local or regional level. I don't know, but it's a warning sign. I think it's not. I see it as not a good sign. Secondly, just what Berta was mentioning, indeed. This GSA is a young body. It's new. It's been almost 2 years old, and exactly that's why we could shape it now to best of the needs of all staff. That's how I see it. Secondly, and this is a point I think I made before as well, that indeed we are part of the Federation of International Civil Servants Association. However, more importantly, we are not part of the International Civil Servant Association. And, this has been going on, and this has been raised before I believe is for financial reasons. Because if we would be part of the International Civil Servant Association committee, which I am not part of, that will enable, for example, local staff to participate in local staff salary surveys in their respective countries, which we cannot right now because we are not part of the ICSC. So that's one important thing also for the future, maybe to lobby for that with the management, that IOM should become part of the ICSC, not just of the FIICA, because this of the associations, but for staff in general. Thirdly, as mentioned by Berta, indeed, there was a communication amongst members of the staff association, and there was a principle raised indeed by myself, to other members on the topic of what was just mentioned before of local staff majority representation within the GSAC, based on the simple fact of that local staff has an absolute far majority within the organization, and that should be, at least in the opinion of these members, which came to 350, is now over 350, would be endorsed by these members. So that's something for the future, maybe to debate on and to talk about, and to perhaps what you just said earlier, that maybe a survey can be done on changes of the statutes, changes that are necessary. I think could be included there, for example, just to put it forward the membership to them to decide about it. To see what is their opinion about this issue in particular, as well as all the other issues I mentioned before regarding the term, of course, as well of the chairperson, as well as the GSAC, but all of these things. One more technical thing I would like to raise, two actually, I'm sorry, but maybe this is, this is the first or second annual general meeting. Maybe the polling should be done after the session is fully over, meaning after any other business, but that's really a technical issue. And secondly, it would be very welcome to have the minutes of these meetings in a short bullet point, concise, brief way available, just like the GSAC meeting was available. That would help a lot, I think, for staff worldwide to quickly look at it, to quickly have an overview, not to listen to the whole recording of a 1-hour session. They're not here because they don't have time, obviously, but to quickly look at it and to see and be informed. So these are the main points. So especially going back one more time to the communication amongst other members of the staff association, it has to be noted somehow that there's a good amount of people who are thinking of endorsing this idea or principle of majority representation of staff. I think this should be looked into in the future, and if it gets there as per in line with the statutes, we can debate on it and vote on it and so on as the statutes allow in the future. So that would be something that we would look for very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I turn the floor back over to Berta, I just have a few comments. Yeah, so absolutely, I think something that we could look into doing is carrying out a survey. Probably we're looking at a survey and consultations on various aspects of the statutes, including, like you said, representation along different lines, as Berta was saying, and that could perhaps be in the second part of the we're looking at. And then the other point about, regional, so for instance, communication, and we have very low numbers for the AGM. Yeah, definitely. Some of the regional reps have been engaging in regional town halls, national town halls. They go on TDYs, they hold town halls. The same for me. I go whenever wherever I am, I try and do a town hall, an individual meeting, and we get higher numbers then. Then we tend to get, half the people in a mission or more. And the regional ones, even over Skype, it makes a big difference. So yeah, it is quite hard to get people to attend sometimes the AGM as opposed to these more national or regional level initiatives. So point well taken that I think we need to continue and ratchet up our communication at the national and regional levels as well as the global level. Absolutely. In terms of the ICSC membership, So this is something that that we can raise with Human Resources Management and with the administration generally as to why we just have observer status. We do have observer status, which gives us very little influence. We aren't members like the other UN agencies. The other ones are members for the most part. So this is something that we'd be happy to raise with the administration and ask for the reasons and if there's that possibility and so on. Part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that we just joined the UN in September of 2016, so it's only been 3 years, whereas other UN agencies have been part of the UN for many years, and so they were also part of the ICSC. So this is something we'll be happy to raise. In terms of the minutes, yes, for the EGM that we held on the 3rd of July, we did extensive minutes for the extraordinary general meeting, not for the initial AGM on the 15th of January. But now, you know, with the EGM, that was the first time we did minutes, we'll be doing minutes every time. So we're taking copious notes. We'll definitely be providing concise minutes within the next week or two. As well as the recordings to all GSA members worldwide. So very, very important to have these records. And also, like you said, Gyula, so that staff members who weren't able to attend and don't want to listen to the entire thing can get the minutes from both sessions. And lastly, you were mentioning about the poll being after AOB. That makes good sense. We also put it before AOB because sometimes, you know, people leave during AOB sometimes, and then they're not polled, they don't vote. So that's the thing, because sometimes they're interested in what's on the agenda, but then they say, oh, AOB, I don't have to stay for that, and then they miss the poll. So it's also, you know, it's tricky in that sense. But yes, thank you again.
No, I just wanted to
yes,
give like clarification on
yeah.
the ICSC, because actually the administration follows, at least for international staff, the salary levels that are recommended, including the post adjustments by the ICSC. And actually, one of the issues that kept us busy in the past few months was the pay cuts at the level on the basis of what the ICSC had decided. And this was brought to the ILO together with other agencies, who basically contest the decision of the administration to implement the ICSC. So I just would like you to clarify that point. Thanks.
Okay, before turning the floor over to Berta, Gyula, would you like to clarify that particular point on the ICSC?
If I'm not confused, I mean, we have seen the case in several countries, no? As GSAC, the ICSC, in terms of the salary service, it's looking at the country as such. I don't think they make a distinction between national and international. I'm not understanding what the issue is there.
So Gyula, can you clarify for us a bit more?
Yes. Oh, hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I couldn't hear Nicola really. It was breaking down. It was totally breaking down. But I got I think like every 2 seconds it broke down. Then for international stuff, indeed, I mean, the ICSC establishes the salaries needs, and but for local stuff, salaries are established locally by the local salary survey committees of all UN agencies present in that country. And since we are not in the ICSC, indeed, we can only observe it. We cannot participate in it, give our expertise to it, of great finance colleagues, for example, or statistical colleagues, and we don't know what is going on. We will only find out about any salary change from the official channels from the ICSC or as communicated from headquarters. So we have absolutely zero influence worldwide on the local salary survey. And a lot of stuff, because how these surveys are done, that it is a comparative exercise comparing our salaries with salaries of other companies, private sector, government sector, and so on. So the more staff are participating, the more input we can get. And this is especially true then for missions and operations with a large amount of IOM staff, national staff. So it could be much more effective. It would be very, very useful for local staff. This is a main issue, I think, because again, it goes back to that indeed for international staff, salaries are set for the by the ICSC, the base salaries, and we observe them indeed. But there's a totally different methodology there, of course. There's a place-to-place survey, but it's how that's established. So it's totally two different, very much verified. It's very good to be part of ICSC, and really this has been brought up before, I think through you or direct conversation, I don't know, but there was a strange answer why we are only.
Julia, if I can give you another piece of information, other agencies that for which national staff is part of the ICSC survey are actually considered withdrawing from it based on what happened in 2018. What has happened is that for Geneva staff base, is that the ICSC conducted an assessment of salaries in 2016, and we were told that our participation was extremely important in this survey to determine the new staff salary that was supposed to, at least in our opinions, knowing what the cost of life in Geneva is, higher than what we had at that time. As a matter of fact, ICSC's calculations were weak, were flawed, and this was recognized by the ILO tribunal in the judgment upon which the organizations that respond to the ILO tribunal, including ours, had to re-establish the previous post-adjustment rate, determining therefore an increase of our salaries back to the levels of 2018. So what I'm saying is that participating in what I'm saying is that there is a lot of concerns about ICSC. There is a lot of legal actions being taken against the decisions or recommendations of the ICSC, and based on the discussion that we're having with other organizations here, I would actually be very cautious in saying that we need to follow directly the ICSC, considering what they have done in the past 2 years. And I would question the fact that being part of the ICSC would necessarily result in better salary conditions for our staff, because we have seen in the past few years that that is not the case. On the contrary, this has led to one of the major legal challenges that we have brought to the ILO tribunal, and we've won it. And other organizations who are not under the ILO tribunal, such as UNICEF or others, are actually struggling because they're waiting for another tribunal to decide on these very matters. So the picture is a bit more complex than what it looks like from an external perspective, and I would caution some ideas that just because by being part of the ICSC, our conditions will be better. I can tell you, I've been part of the fight against it, and that's not the case. Thanks.
Okay, and Berta, would you like to say something? Oh, I think we've lost her. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Gyula, for these questions, and thanks to all of you for your participation. That concludes our AGM, but as I said earlier, we will be sending round the minutes in the next few weeks, and the recordings as well. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.